the world is reorganizing itself. And it's coming to a moment where technology is automating its own thinking to a level that there's going to be reorganization and we're going to be thinking differently. What I say is I'm building for the other side. I look for what the actual future is, not the immediate future. I kind of look at the horizon line and go, I'm not a person that looks at goals as much as I am at objectives. So what do I need now if this is directionally where I want to be? Because the goal tends to change. So I look at the world and I go, the world's reorganizing. It is not my job to reorganize it. And it's not my job to stop reorganizing it. How can I contribute to the positive reorganization of the world without me attempting to control it, which again involves surrender?
Hi, this is JP Newman on Investing on Purpose. And gosh, I'm so excited about today's guest on our show, Ron Lynch. For those of you who talk about, I really want to get my funnel going, I really want to know my marketing better, this episode's going to blow you away because I don't know anyone who's a bigger direct marketing or marketing savant than Ron Lynch. And Ron, I've been wanting to have you on here, but it took a ski trip, 5 days of us hanging out together to really, really unlock not only a new friendship, but also your genius of what you've done. Ron has done, I think you mentioned you've done over 300 companies, if I think you said, 70 brands and about $6 billion worth of sales on the things that you marketed for, which I don't know anyone else who can really have that claim to fame.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing there is the variety. So
Yes.
I have a head full of case studies, which makes me pretty useful to people. I'm kind of a Swiss Army knife of marketing. So it's not just the volume, it's the width. It's being able to have worked in so many different industries and meet so many different people along the way. It's been a joy for me. I mean, it's like getting paid to be a student. It's wonderful.
It's amazing. What I've noticed about you, I know you mentioned GoPro, if I remember, you said DuPont, from the George Foreman Grill, which was your first one. How you went from a supermarket CEO to all of a sudden direct marketing the George Foreman Grill, which I know was a huge success. What I've noticed about you, Ron, and I think you guys are going to find this interesting in these episodes, it's very hard to find people who can shift that quickly. Like a lot of times, including myself, there's this idea that there's an entrepreneur that's got like a one-hit wonder. Well, I don't mean that in a bad way, but like for me, my company, Thrive, I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm a real estate guy. I do invest in a lot of things, so I'll give myself a little more credit. But what I learned about you the first day we had lunch is your mind, inventor, thought leader, spiritual philosophy. And immediately, even when we talked about Thrive, you were like literally giving me like 5 great marketing ideas I hadn't thought about. So you like shifted from commercial real estate to cars to cameras. And just, I remember in Utah, you were talking about a new paint, you're making up a virtual AI paint company that you were going to pitch to called Red Rooster and how you were going to pitch to them. You made up this whole scenario and it was so well thought out. So I want to go down deep with you on that. And I think for this episode, for any of you who have a company right now and you want to get a better idea of how to build your funnel or marketing it, I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. We're going to go not only into the how, but of course the why, because this is investing on purpose. And kind of, Ron, one of the things I found really interesting about our conversation was so many people will never even get to like, including myself, by the way, I think I'm a great visionary. I'm not a great executor of marketing, and you are. And I think through your story, Ron, what you told me, I'd love for you to share with the audience. You got so good at it. You almost became, what happens when you get so good at marketing that you can sell anything and then you necessarily get stopped? I'm gonna let you tell the story of why you decided let's just jump into how did you get so good? And when you got to that moment of like, I can sell anything, and then you had a big shift in your life. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. You want to start there? You want to start how I learned what I got there? Yeah. Okay. Wherever.
You go.
Okay. Well, I was in college. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. And I had a roommate who's a very good friend of mine who lives here in town now. And he got an audition for a movie. And I went along with him and I landed a role in a movie that Robert Altman directed. And I got a SAG card.
What was the film?
It was called The Caine Mutiny Court Martial. It was a film of the play that Herman Wouk wrote. And it was being put on CBS television at the time that the trials with Reagan, the Colonel Oliver North.
Iran-Contra.
Yeah, Iran and Oliver North. They kind of took that story and put it on TV. And then it ended up in Europe in theaters. But I got this SAG card, which I lived in Seattle at the time. So that allowed me to be one of the few actors in Seattle, me and Brendan Fraser. There was a couple of us that had SAG cards. And so I got to do a bunch of movies, and I stayed on and learned how movies were made as a PA. So I had this kind of awareness. And Jeff Bridges, as a matter of fact, I asked him on set one day, how do I get to be in your shoes? And he said, it's really easy. Make sure your dad's Lloyd Bridges.
That's funny.
And he said, well, if you can't do that, write. And I hated writing. So, but I went, I'm okay. I just took his advice and I bought Sid Field's screenplay and I started writing screenplays. Then I went to my day job at the grocery store. And one of my last films that I worked on was Dogfight with River Phoenix, which was one of his last films. And I kind of watched how he kind of went downhill, how he was surrounded by yes people. And that really was the main contributor to his death, was not having a good enough friend to say stop.
Yeah.
And so I backed away from Hollywood and threw myself at the grocery business, fell in love with this girl. We're still married 35 years later. And I worked my way up to eventually run a grocery company. And then my friends were doing these films for the George Foreman Grill, these infomercials. I ended up getting hired by them as a creative director and left my grocery career behind. But I'd learned P&Ls. I learned retail flow. I'd learned how to introduce products. I learned how to sell through a cooking kiosk. So that's kind of an infomercial in a grocery store.
Of course.
So I put that together with my film understanding and boom, I was making infomercials. So that led to about a 15-year run of ranking up about $6 billion worth of sales in all these different products and all these different companies. And to your point, I got so good at it, I thought it was about me.
Yeah. Let me ask you one question before you go further, because a lot of people are going to ask me, stop, Ron, how'd you get so good at it? Like, what do you think, if you were to give advice to the audience, everyone, this is the golden, everyone's chasing the same thing. How do I make my brand bigger? What were some of the principles that made you so good at it before you continue with the story? Because I think that's really important.
I figured out the principles after the break.
Okay.
So the break occurred, but the principles were, one, you had to have a problem in the world that existed, and you had to have a real solution for it. So it required innovation. A great successful product or company brings innovation to the market. I don't know how to sell commodities. I knew how to make an omelet, which is made out of commodities, but in a great food processor is the innovation. So I knew how to sell the food processor. Sell the omelet via the food processor. In order to make it, you have to have the food processor.
Got it.
Like, that's what I learned. Okay, so you have to have an innovation. Then there needs to be...
But we say innovation, Ron, I think a lot of people, and I kind of warn about this, like, everyone thinks sometimes if you don't get enough feedback, you think your innovation's actually interesting to enough people. And a lot of times people fall in love with their ideas or their product or service, and they think they've got an innovation, but it's actually not a big enough innovation. Can you talk to that a little bit?
You knew what the second point was.
Oh, go ahead.
No, it is. It's audience. It's audience.
Is there an audience?
There's an audience.
Right.
You can have an innovation and there's no audience for it and nobody cares. And I had Kid Rock I had Kid Rock in my office with a barbecue that had flames cut out of it. And it was just this most exotic, amazing barbecue, but they cost $10,000 to build, which means at retail, leading to the third point, there has to be margin.
Right.
That would be a $40,000 barbecue.
Right.
Got no customers. So no audience, wrong margins. So you have to have innovation, audience, margin. Then what we provide as marketers is story.
Mm.
And your story is about the features or the innovation, you're going to lose.
Interesting.
The story has to be about the customer's problem or hope and the benefits, because people buy benefits, not features. So I need to tell you, I'm going to make a transformation for you. You can have the transformation. You're going to get these 3 benefits from the transformation. By the way, here's these features that back them up. And here's an offer that makes it obtainable for you. And
Ron,
that's really the formula.
And you mentioned, Ron, to me when we had dinner, with benefits, a lot of them aren't, you got to get people out of their head and into like some kind of spiritual, I think you used the word, the mirrors, I think how you described it to me. Because it's not just benefits. It's got to be benefits that trigger something in you emotionally, that you must buy this thing, that you cannot live without it. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah. And it's the reason that we say mirror is we are in a business of selling mirrors if we're marketing. It's who are you deep down, or who can you be? So it's pain or hope. So when you say, what's the benefit of owning Tesla versus a Prius versus a Chevy Volt. They're all electric cars, but with a did I say Tesla? Yeah, with a Tesla, you get luxury. I get prestige. With Chevy Volt, I get American, and I get a rebate from the government, and it was built here. Like, you get patriotism with that. I'm a better patriot by birth. And with Prius, there's a political cachet of, I'm doing good for the earth. I'm going to put my stickers all over the back of this car and let everybody know how virtuous I am. So you're buying virtue with that. So if I can sell you a character transformation. So when we sold GoPro, the product was Hero. The camera was called a Hero.
I have one.
So we sold bravery. And no one wants to brag about their ability to ski or surf or be brave. So you film this selfie and you put it online, and now you're a hero. You're brave. We know that you're brave without you talking about what an awesome, because nobody wants to hear about what a great surfer you are, or fisherman, or what. But with a video, you don't have to do that. So you've sold the idea of bravery or hero-ness, boldness, adventuresomeness through the vehicle of the product. So when I adopt the product, and that's what brand actually is. We tend to think when we're nascent in our marketing careers that brand is, this is what you think about the company. No, it's what you think about yourself for engaging with the company. And my proof of that is in social media, how people align themselves with products. This is what the propagators of products online do is, oh, I'm a bulletproof coffee drinking, Helly Hansen wearing, Jeep Wrangler driving, and they just start to define their personality in social media with these merit badges like a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout by association of the brand ethos of the brands. So I'm rugged with a Jeep. I'm smart with bulletproof coffee. Like you start to see, oh, they're attributes.
Right.
So if you have an attribute, it's very unlikely that someone's going to talk about your brand and market it for you, because ultimately marketing is not you talking about your product. That's advertising. Marketing is them talking about your product. It's the audience's discussion that you've hopefully framed correctly for the water cooler talk about. So when George Foreman Grill came out, people thought, oh, this is families. Moms are going to love this because they're going to cook faster and there's going to be no dishes. Moms did not buy the product. The elderly were the first adopters, and apartment dwellers, young people and old people that they didn't suspect. Was not for family dinner. It was, I'm only cooking for myself. I don't want to clean up dishes. It was much more simpler than we thought,
right?
Than the founders thought. I came into that mid-process.
What was the badge for that? Was there a badge for the George Foreman Grill? Was there any emotional badge or anything that you wore with it, or less so with that?
It was healthier. Because the original George Foreman Grill was called the Lean, Mean, Fat-Reducing Grilling Machine. And that was all printed on the label.
Wow.
That whole tagline was on the product. So it had been originally made by Sultan as a taco maker. Put taco meat in it, and there was a comb that you scraped it out because it was angled. And then Rick Cesare, who was the savant behind that, who I used to work with, we used to be partners, he saw the grease dripping out, and he goes, oh, that's lower fat. And he was a health food guy, had done the Juice Man Juicer. And he went, this is low fat. And it was right when that craze was 1997 to 2004.
Yeah.
And they absolutely capitalized on the beginning of the low fat, no fat.
You know, Ron, when I worked at Sony Pictures in a former life and produced animation, we spent a lot of time talking about Joseph Campbell. It didn't matter if it was, for those of you who don't know Joseph Campbell, it's a great tangent to look up Joseph Campbell and A Hero's Journey. But for every movie or for every story, every myth that's been created on this planet, you're watching the hero go through some form of transformation. That's actually the arc of almost, not all stories, but almost every story. And what I'm hearing you say, this hero's journey, the hero, like it's Luke Skywalker, and he has to go through his test, and basically the tests lead to a climax and then what have you. I almost feel like what you're describing with these badges is a hero's journey. Like when you wear something about healthy or brave, it's a characteristic. It's like your soul or your own inner hero is going through a journey. So if you can create a product that really grabs me at that hero level. That's like spiritually transformative is what I think I hear you saying. That's much, and maybe not all products are spiritually transformative, but I think that's the mirror that you're talking about. Am I on the right track?
It is. Yes, you are on the right track. But I think it goes beyond hero's journey to character identity. Because if you dig down into some brands like the Oakland Raiders, it's not hero, it's villain. It's I'm a badass. And there's a fair amount, there's a space in the marketplace for I'm naughty as well. It's what do you want?
I'm an anti-hero.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's where was Harley Davidson? It used to be bikers, and then they moved that from biker used to mean one thing, and now biker means something different. These guys are millionaires that live in
right.
They're not what we thought of an easy rider.
Right. Correct.
So it's character. What character do you want to play in this life?
Identity, character. It makes sense. Well, continue on. Like, tell us more about your success and kind of.
Well, let's just. I go through this, and I've gone now and done a bunch of brands, worked for different consumer goods companies, navigated learning contracts and how to deal with celebrities, how to license, how to manufacture, supply chain, fulfillment, all of the things that are included in any large global corporation.
Sure.
So I was doing this, but having this understanding of retail mechanics was much greater than just an understanding of advertising.
I got to imagine that made you like the dual threat.
So this is kind of what I'm driving at, is that I looked at the world like Da Vinci's my hero. And to me, mastery isn't learning one thing really well. It's learning several things really well, because they cross-pollinate. Like in your world, it's not just real estate.
No.
There's 5 disciplines that you really have to be expert in to be JP. Like you've had to, so you have to understand management. You have to understand human relations and HR. You have to understand investment and finance. You have to understand the audience, who's going to live in these places. Like there's a lot to it. It's not just a thing.
Right.
So then as business people, we're on a journey.
Yeah.
So we have these different stages of life. So I had got to the stage where I got enough to know enough magic tricks to kind of pull anything off.
Talk about that for a minute. That's really important. So, because I know those moments in life. So here you are. How old were you when you're kind of in the pinnacle here of just anything you touched, you could turn it to gold? You had the Midas touch.
Between 35 and 45.
So I imagine you're making some good money now, right? So you're making some good money. I imagine you're a wanted source. You're a dual or a 5-time threat where people know when you touch products, these campaigns work well. So I imagine your phone was ringing a lot, correct? Am I being
that's
humble about it? What's going through your mind at that point? So here you are, you're like, I'm kind of hot stuff, I imagine. Like, I'm pretty good at what I do. People want me. Like, what was that time of your life like? What was the experience?
I love being on airplanes. I love going to big meetings with big companies. So one of the things that I'd gotten away from was finding the small product that really served the customer, to finding the big corporations so I could have the Samsung and the J&J and I wanted those on my personal car.
Yep.
Like I wanted those big companies. And my assumption was no matter what they were doing, they would hire me and it would be ethical. And for the most part, it was. But those are actually not lucrative contracts because those companies are so well versed in businesses and their lawyers are so good. By the time that you get involved as a marketer, you're really just working for the moniker. Like you can make a couple $100,000 on each of those contracts a year.
Right.
But
they're not going to give you a profit sharing case in NASCAR.
No, you're like trying to get a hold of the media dollars so that you get a sliver of that with media buyers and stuff, but you're not getting what you could get. And so the internet comes along. Like this is 2007, 2008, 2000. So suddenly the internet comes along and the model inverts. And media is now free. It's Facebook and YouTube and all these other channels. And I'm like, the audience is signing up for this. Facebook is a media channel, just like ABC is.
Sure.
The world's signing up for this. There's no advertisers on it. So now you can start to do these things in social media that you're not paying any dollars output initially for. I mean, Facebook didn't start charging for advertising for quite some time,
right.
And they were letting anybody go on and pretty much say anything.
Right.
So now I'm helping small business people do big numbers. And I'm like, shh, I'm collecting the money because they needed the juice that I had. So I was doing that. And it was like, well, this is easy. So now I started helping unethical people because the money's so good and nobody knows I'm operating behind a curtain.
You're a top internet marketer. You're the wizard of top internet marketing.
Nobody knows it, and I don't want them to know it.
Gotcha. So
I'm helping all these folks, and my house becomes full of these people. My house, our house was named the Swiss consulate, and people stopped by. And my daughter couldn't take it. She was like, the people that are showing up to our house, and she wrote me a 5-page letter and she left it on my desk. And she was right. And I had to take a serious look in the mirror as to who I was showing up for as my family, because I certainly gave lip service to I'm a dad first and I'm a husband first. And then I wasn't being that. I was being the me show first. And I was getting a lot of praise for that. So there was a lot of external forces that I think in most cases would have made someone's family leave them. And I credit them, not me, for not leaving. And that made me turn inwards and go, what am I doing? And what am I going to do going forward? And so I had to turn an awful lot of switches off.
Before you go there, Ron, if you can, I don't want you to overshare, but that's a hard note as a parent of a junior and a senior to get a note from my, says that you got put on notice by one of your kids, right?
Yeah, I don't mind saying it.
Can you share, like, without having the deep, like, what was it that she put you? What was the Ron show? What was it like, or what was she saying in the letter that you're like, holy shit, I need attention?
She said the problem is not that you're just narcissistic. The problem is that everybody you know is narcissistic, and you're enabling their narcissism through yours, and they're praising you. So you're like the king of shit hill. Like you're at the top of something you don't even want to be, I don't think. And I don't know, like, I don't know where my dad is now.
Wow. Just take a moment with that. I'd be like, whoa.
And that's, and I credit her for really saving my life. And we've worked very hard. I've worked very hard to repair my relationship with her. She had nothing to repair. I had to repair. I had to fix it.
Pretty courageous of her and articulate of her
Super
to actually
courageous.
go
Like
do that
she's
to your father.
a brave young woman. And my sons were, they're guys. So they're like, hunter, like they have their own world of machoism, and they're in their late teens at that point, early 20s. So they're off doing their lives, and they're doing their own version of what young men do, which is that. But the special nature of a father-daughter relationship is that is the only female love you will ever get in your life as a man that is not transactional at some level. You can disappoint your mother. She wants you to grow up and do things, and she has power and manipulative control over you to a certain degree. And that's just the nature of mother-son relationships. And father-son relationships to a certain degree. But when it's your daughter, that's the only, like, when she tells the truth, it's the truth. That's the mirror. And you're like, all right, how do I even begin? So I went and got counseling. I did MDMA therapy. I eventually did a BOGA. And I'm not going to say I'm fixed. I can say I'm healing.
We always are. It's a life journey.
Yeah, I'm in the process. I'm in that process, and it's much better for everyone around me. So we ended up selling that house and a lot of the accoutrement of that lifestyle, and we bought a little farmhouse that's a third the size out in the middle of the country, where the only people who come visit are people who really want to. And it's a much nicer existence. And now the products that I work on and the initiatives that I work on are truly things that I believe will help humanity. And COVID helped me discover that, because when COVID came, being a person of means, and I'll tell you, this was completely selfish. I thought everybody's going to come to me because everybody's out of work, and I'm a person with means, and everybody I know, I love, and they love me, and it'll be Uncle Ron, please help. And I'm like, I don't have enough money to go around to feed and clothe and house and loan all of the people that I know are going to come ask me. So I created IntelliHelp in a day on March 14th, the day the lockdown came, and called most of my friends who dove in on the internet, some of these marketers as well. And suddenly we were feeding people. And it was peer to peer. A hungry person posted a list. Another person came, went to Instacart, went to Amazon, went to HEB online, or delivered those groceries to that person. So I was just a distribution network. One of my mentors is Jorge Limon, who owns InBev, 3G Capital. And I heard him speak once, and it was all about distribution networks. And for years, I thought I was in the product launch business. And he woke me up to the fact that I was always in the distribution business and didn't know it, even when I was in the grocery business. Once I got that chip, the mathematics of the audience and everything I did kind of changed. I looked at the world a lot differently. And then I looked at people who had great distribution networks, which were founded in great brands where you could just drop another product in to help people. And that's what I went, oh, I'm going to start building distribution networks.
It's amazing. You know, Ron, I was actually during COVID, I was so fascinated with what you're doing. I have a nonprofit called Veritas. And that's actually when you and I started really getting to know each other. And I was so impressed with what you built. And just, you know, I helped one person. I actually would have helped multiple people, but I remember the person that I helped. She had a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old. And with COVID, she had no money coming in. And she needed diapers, baby food, like her list. And I couldn't believe that something so basic of a distribution list to help somebody. Someone has a need, someone has an ask, someone's got resources, and someone's got a need, and just simply bringing them together on a dashboard was so powerful. And she was so grateful and really reached out to me to let me know like how much that, whatever it was, call it $100, whatever it was back and forth. That all I said to her, I said, all you need to do is go to HEB, you know, it was during the COVID, like these are paid for. I got your list. So it was so basic and yet so powerful. And I just love that you did that. And I know how many people use that service or are still using that service that you know of at this point.
So they broke it down as far as meals. I think we did a statistical analysis, and it was 3.5 million meals were delivered per year for those 2 years. So that probably is like more like 100,000 households or exchanges because multiple meals came in a thing. But to your point, the magnificent thing about that was to see how people stepped in. And there were women that were of means who suddenly they were locked in their houses and they spent their entire days shopping for people online and getting the groceries delivered. And this was the blessing to me, was you were seeing people that I consider to be rich people, helping poor people cross races, cultures, religions, and that all went away for a minute for everybody.
It really did. And in my experience, Bob, I was, you know, like everyone else, was early COVID. I was pretty stressed out with the unknown. And I know that was therapy for me. And it was a little clunky at the time. It was before you know your features done. It was a little clunky, but the clunkiness was good. I had to it probably took me, let's call it an hour to get that all done. It was therapy for me. The gift really came to me of like, how can I help? I'm stuck here. I feel like I'm a victim of COVID. This gives me a chance to have some control, some effectuation of a pandemic. So I always say, my rabbi says this too, this idea that a lot of times there's ancient wisdom in the Bible and the Torah, that actually the person who generally gets the bigger gift is not the receiver. It's the person who's actually giving the gift. A lot of times is going to get a bigger blessing than the person who's actually receiving the gift. And I think that was really true and very palpable in this case. That was what it was like.
Yeah, I agree totally. And I mean, as I've aged and I've learned more about it, and I'd love to say I can get credit for that. I thought of it. I did the Facebook post. A whole bunch of volunteers came in and built it and did it. So it was just my idea. I'm good at business modeling, and this is how the structure should be. And then other people come in. And so I want to be really clear. I didn't do it. A whole bunch of people did it. And I mean, hundreds of people. So, but in the midst of that, to say, even in our culture, we've invented this thing called commercial Christmas with this Santa. And we teach our kids to worship materialism. And what did you get? And what are the things? And this is part of that thinking of moving from giving to getting to giving in brand. The real question around Christmas to me is not what you got for Christmas, is what did you give for Christmas? And when I learned that was the real question that we were supposed to be asking ourselves, the whole world changed for me, because there was this whole programming of my entire youth that was to have an identity. It's what do you obtain? What do you get? What do you show the world? And my daughter helped reflip that combination and go, what are you giving the world? What are you, you have this skill set. Why are you using it predatorily? Why aren't you?
Yeah.
And that's at the essence of what I've learned is God will make you the vehicle. You are the distribution network. So when I pray, I don't pray for me. I pray for you and you and you. My job is to distribute his love, his grace, and his words and his goods and it's distribution. Then he blesses me to give away more. I mean, take it from his perspective. If you've got all these kids praying to you and they're like, give me, give me, give me, give me. Which one do you pay attention to? Go, hey, wait a minute. Between all the gimme gimmes, I'm the one that gives it away. Oh, yeah, you step to the front. I'm going to help you give stuff away.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard recently, I forget who said this to me, but in the last week, if you think about it, as you get older, once you're not a kid, what do you remember about presents during the holidays? You actually remember, you get more joy out of like seeing the person's face. Like you're going to get your sweater. You're like, oh, that's great. I got a sweater, right? When you're no longer 8 years old, big deal. You really remember the excitement of like, oh, I got Ron a gift. I hope he likes it. It's this coffee mug and I know it's his color and it's got a bad scarf and I think he's going to laugh. Like you get more joy out of that as you get older. The point is the energy of the giving to someone else and serving is inherently, I believe, in our DNA of who we actually are.
Absolutely.
And then when you really start to actually, the secret to happiness is that when you're really working and manifesting that energy, it just gets better and better. And I think that the gift for all of us, the selfish gift of the selflessness is self-satisfaction and life satisfaction. I was thinking last night, I've been on the move, Ron. I've been at Summit at Sea. I've been with you on a 2.5 week amazing ski trip. Last night, I hosted a dinner spontaneously in 1 hour. I brought 10 amazing humans together.
That sounds like you.
I know you don't. I'm just.
That sounds just like, yeah.
I'm completely focused on my kids. I'm there for the, what was the star? What was our eclipse? And I'm doing it all. And I was thinking this morning, it is so fulfilling because it's exactly what you just described. At this point, it could look from the outside, like to my wife, like, God, that's like that looks exhausting. But for me, it's just energy naturally moving through me that is kind of going this direction of serving. So it's actually energizing, not energy draining. When I'm at Summit now, and I really realized that this week, I was with 3,000 people on a boat and pretty swanky entrepreneurial
That's a big
people.
boat.
It's a big boat with 3,000 people and pretty impressive people doing AI and rocketry and crypto and all these people. But what I realized, the first time I went on that boat was 2015. I was at a different place in my life. And I remember my energy kind of being drained because like, oh, should I network with that person? Maybe that person might be an investor of mine. Much more transactional. Maybe what can this person do for me? Or, look at that really attractive person over there. And my energy was leaking because I was still in transaction mode.
Yep.
And I realized on this trip how much my life has transformed because when you get rid of having to be transactional and you're actually just there to be a vessel for spirit to serve, it was amazing. In the middle of 2,000 people partying with the loudest DJ from Ibiza and people freaking out. I was having so much fun too, by the way. I was like in the middle of like a spiritual exercise. I'm sitting here.
That's called being transcendent. It's going from being transactional to transcendent.
Yeah.
And you are, so you said something in the middle of that I really want to pull out.
Yeah.
Because it is so interesting to who you are at your core. You had a Freudian slip in there.
Tell me.
Did you hear it? You described the eclipse and you actually said, what do you call it? Our star, the sun. Your mind is wired in such a way with your connection to God that you actually had to find a reference point to call our sun the sun because it's a star in the universe to you. That is a completely different, your mind looks at everything in a transcendent way. These relationships, what you do. I'm not sure I've ever heard anybody say, our star up there. Oh, the sun. That's what it's called. It's the sun, our star. Yeah, that means you're so aware of the fact that you're in a universe and that it contains many, many important things. And there are a lot of stars out there. Oh, but this one happens to be ours, which is indicative that you think that there's something greater than even this.
Yeah.
And that's very impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So I was just going to say, just in the life satisfaction, I want to continue with your story, but definitely it was really satisfying, going from 2015, you had 9 years. And I mean, I remember there was a moment, I'm on the dance floor, it's 3 a.m. and people are raging. This was a great famous DJ. And the vibe was like raging, but really good energy. These are good people having a great time. And I really felt like at one moment I'm raging with them and celebrating. And I'm like literally having a spiritual practice where I'm meditating and blessing them and feeling energy. I know I don't usually get this woo on my shows, but I'm literally feeling energy going in my legs and out my arms just to bless the whole room at the same time that I'm just dancing and being part of them. Where in 2015, it's like, who's there? Being much more observational. Who's that person? What's that person wearing? Who is that person? And like, it's beautiful to see that. And so I think I've had my own version of a journey that sounds very similar to yours. And it's taken a lot of hard lessons and pain and awkwardness and trusting myself, because I can tell you, like when you were talking about your daughter's thing, like it took a while for me in success to actually learn that I can trust myself. Because I remember when I started making money, I'm like, maybe I'm going to be that asshole.
Right.
Maybe I'm going to get that car. Maybe I'm going to divorce my wife. Maybe I'm going to become one of those casualties.
Oh, I saw your post on this the other day. You spoke about this the other day about, I hope I don't turn into that. And you found out you didn't. You're like, oh, I can trust myself.
It took me a while to trust myself because I didn't know. I spent my entire life, and this will be a great transaction. I spent my entire life as a knight, which I want to talk about knighthood. A knight is something we're going to talk about, this development of men, but I was a knight yearning, call to adventure. I'm going to create a business. I'm going to go to UCLA. I'm going to succeed. I'm going to find the girl. I'm going to impress her. I'm going to create a business and be the best provider ever, which is knighthood. It's like this call to adventure. You're in action. But I never got to the point of, what if I actually slay the dragon and become the provider? Then what?
Right.
And like, I had never gotten to that far. So there was so much distrust that when I actually started making some money, I'm like, oh, this is uncomfortable, because I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know anything. I didn't have any reference beyond this knighthood. And if we can actually, maybe we can go play with this idea, Ron, if you could, because we were in Utah. There's this wonderful book called The Amazing Development of Men with Alison Armstrong. I know she's a friend of yours. Highly recommend, by the way, for those of you who have not read The Amazing Development of Men or The Amazing Development of Women. One of my favorite books, I read it about 4 years ago, and it was the first book that gave me a framework that, my God, in life, as a man or a woman, there are some inherent characteristics that we are, and there's stages of life. And by the way, just because you get older doesn't necessarily mean that there's a linear thing that you're not going to go because you're 40 to the next stage. These are spiritual stages. And then what Ron taught me, and Ron, I can't wait to jump into this with you. Not only if you get lucky enough do you go from one stage to the next, but the stages aren't necessarily linear. There's many paths that you can go, and which I did not know until you and I had this conversation. So if it's okay, can we jump into this a little bit?
For sure. I think for many of us, it starts with the question of in kindergarten of, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so people pick a vocation. And we're trained into that. I'm going to go from this to that to this. And most of us grow up poor. And statistically, that's what happens to a human. And the actual question that we should ask children is, who are you going to be when you grow up? And if we started them thinking with who they want to be,
love it.
It would be a much different life for all of us. So one of the things that Allison teaches is this progression, both for men and women, but she focuses around men in this particular dialogue of, I think we'll all get this. We kind of start out as slaves at the slave job, and then we work for the field boss and he's a jerk, but he used to be a slave. And then we become the field boss and then we become the jerk. But then we find, we've got a little coin and we can, there's a kingdom, and I can be a knight, and then I can be a prince, I can be a king, and then I can be an emperor. And we think of these as financial metrics and respect metrics.
But okay, I have one more thing.
Please,
I know
please.
the base for men particularly, I don't know the women's, is that at the very core from the day you're born, if you're a man, and this is actually important for women to understand too, a man has a call to adventure. So at every stage, what's in common? A man, from when he's 2 years old and he grabs the sword and jumps off the couch to kingdom, is always on some form of a call to adventure.
Absolutely. And to conquer our testosterone, drives us to do that.
Yeah.
Like we're hardwired with high octane gasoline, and women are slow wired with connective tools, nurturing tools, and diesel. And that expresses itself emotionally and sexually, and go, oh, but I'm an exception. That's fine. You can be the exception to the rule, but there's some general parameters that as men and women we operate under. So here I was doing this journey myself, making more money, moving from night to print, but I was really good at making games. People around me were getting really rich based upon what I was doing. And one of the frustrations that came about that was tied to this conversation with my daughter and this change in me was, I wasn't actually on that path and didn't know it. I didn't know there was another path.
Right.
And once that awareness hit me, I looked backwards and I went, oh, I've been crafting words, and the words move people. And so there's a bunch of careers that are that. And they're lawyers and they're preachers and I kind of started like as a lawyer and as a salesperson. This is the path of magic. It's magic tricks. And I loved magic as a kid. I learned the magic trick magic tricks are science tricks. There's no such thing as a magic trick. They're just occluded science tricks.
Correct.
So I loved magic tricks. I loved these demonstrations that became cooking demonstrations on TV, movies about cooking demonstrations, because I could sell 20 things in a grocery store. I could put that same demonstration on TV and I could sell 200,000.
Love it.
Just by filming it. So I was doing magic. And then I learned, I was a wizard. And then I realized I was a dark wizard because I didn't care what I was wizarding. I was wizarding for transactions, for money, for my own identity and my own pride. And when that got stripped from me, I went, well, if you know this wizardry, and that's unfortunately my craft, what's the choice? And the choice was become one of the three wise men, become a magi, become connected to God, and use the magic and the spells to do his work. So I still participate in business and I still do marketing, but most of I advise companies and I mentor a bunch of young business people and I do all of those things, but nobody crosses my path in my business world without getting an essence of my connection to God and my expectation that God is willing to be connected to you. And we tend to think we pray and then we go to work, and apparently God must go to work too. And what I discovered is I am God's work, that he doesn't leave. It's me who leaves. And when I went looking for him in my first MDMA journey, I discovered he had been standing behind me the whole time like I was a baby touching hot stoves. And he's there 100% of the time. And I'm like, well, how does he do that forever? God's infinite. It's real easy. He's infinite. You're not. So God's attention is 100% devoted to you 100% of the time because there's enough of him to go around. Suddenly the anxiety goes away. When you can get a hold of that idea and go, then I don't have to chase the money. And in Christianity, Jesus is one of his last miracles. He preaches in the temple and the Pharisees come to him and go, hey, we get paid when we do this. There's an offering. Crowd gives us shekels. Where's the money? And he turns to Peter and he goes, go get me a fish. You're a fisherman. Peter walks out, comes back a few minutes later with a fish. Jesus hands him the fish and they're like, a fish? And he grabs the fish by the tail and he smacks it and 3 gold coins come out of the fish and they hit the ground. And the story is you don't have to save. You don't have to worry. You're provided for. I've never gotten hungry. I've never missed a meal. But I know how to provide other people meals, so that's probably part of why I'm here. And God provides for me. I don't need to save up and have billions, because that was for my ego. I need to learn how to be the transitory distribution network for these words and these actions so that I teach the other people that he's right behind them because I'm not special.
You mentioned there's 3 paths. You said there was a magi. What are the other 2 paths of wizardry?
Well, no, it's just the layers of it. Is
Oh,
that
it's the layers of
the
it.
Magi were magicians. They came from the East, right? Nobody knows where they came from, but these three Magi came with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, which represent the state, the church, and the culture. Coins of gold represent how the state governs us. Frankincense is utilized in the church as the incense to clear evil so that the words can be read, and myrrh is what the culture puts on dead bodies so they don't stink. So that's the big Star Wars pre-sale in the Bible, is they came with gold, frankincense, and myrrh, so that when he was murdered ultimately by the state, the church, and the culture and rose from the dead, he demonstrated he was the King of Kings, because Christ is a title. It's King of Kings. It's the king of all of those deaths and all of those cultures. And I think right now, internationally, we're doing a pretty good job of demonstrating we cannot govern ourselves through our culture, through our church, or through our state. We're doing a horrible job. And it's about surrender, but that surrender first happens with you as a business person and as a human being. Like, it's gonna be fine if you quit trying to do it your way. Like this idea of, oh, I've got to list my goals and then God's got to make my goals happen. He's already got a plan for you, bud. Your goals are in the way of his plan, as a matter of fact. Surrender.
I also think, when you think about, I'm going to go back a little bit, like when you think about the call to adventure, if I recollect when you're young, you're kind of a pawn, if I remember. The first, a pawn is like, you're almost like learning to be a knight, which means you're not ready to go on the adventure yet. You're too young to jump on the horse. You're just kind of like, you're learning. So that's why boys jump off couches and put on capes. Like they're learning. They're excited to be a knight one day. You're already wired from a very young age. You're just going to go and do that. Then the knight is, I'm now old enough. I've trained. I'm going to go on. I'm a young guy. I'm going to go on the horse and slay the
Somebody
dragon.
hire me to do this for you.
Someone hire me to do this for me. I'm going to go slay that. I'm going to go find out what the world's about.
I'm a mercenary.
And you think about that, and it makes a lot of sense that if you don't know that realization that you're here to serve and surrender, then you can get caught up in knighthood. And I think a lot of men that I know are caught up in being knights. Hey, I just sold my business for $2 million, right? So it's like, I slayed. And then if you don't get the wisdom of the Magi, well, then what do you do next? I'm going to create my next business and do my next adventure because that one wasn't as satisfying as I thought. This one's going to be big. It's going to be a $5 million business. And you go and you slay and you slay and you keep doing circles and you're actually stuck in knighthood because no one ever taught you that beyond knighthood in the Jedi Order is this surrender thing, which actually leads to kingship too, which is servant leadership. So you get to the point where it's not about you. You become a true king. And a true king is not someone who wears a gold hat and goes, please fetch me my tea. It is actually someone who's literally what you described earlier, to the point where they're just here to serve with their wisdom, as much wisdom as they have, what needs to be served, which is mentorship. A lot of the principles we talk about in Investor on Purpose is actually when someone turns into their kinghood. And what's so cool, Ron, that I'm learning about you is, how about when you're a king? And a lot of people never get to kinghood or queenhood. And if you want to know, if you're in a relationship, whether you have a girlfriend, a boyfriend, you're married, I highly recommend you listen on Audible or this, because you'll know a lot more about your partner. Or if you're dating, know what stage that person's in. And by the way, like once again, they may never become a king or a queen. And now what you need to know, well, I think, Ron, the thing you added to me is like, you don't even stop at kinghood. There are so many tricks of, what is your natural God-given talent? Are you a manifester? Because really what you're describing, Ron, is you're just an incredible manifester. You've got the power to produce. And even when you were being humble about your idea for serving people and putting the team together, 99 people can't do that. They can't even put the team together. And it says a lot about you that you're just you're a manifestor generator and probably a bunch of other things too. So anyways, it's a really fun thing. I highly recommend you read the book. Ron, just to tease us, what other directions can you go beyond kinghood? Are there other things beyond Magi and wizard? Are there other areas that you can go to depending on your God-given talents?
There's entertainer. There's a lot of artists and artistry is one of the highest forms of communication between God and you, as being the radio and broadcasting. Like when we think of Da Vinci, we don't normally think of his inventions first. We think of his paintings. We think of the artistry of it. When you think of who do somebody you really admire, who's famous, most people will go to a singer or an actor or a politician. Those are kind of forms of artistry. So I think that that's a whole nother genre. And on the Alison Armstrong discussion as well, folks should also look up Understanding Men and Understanding Women. Those are two other titles that she has that go right into the psychology of who you are and who your partner.
It is great.
Very wonderful stuff.
Very wonderful. It'll make your dating or your relationship life. You just got an upgrade from this show. If you just do that, it's a major upgrade. Come on, I want to end on one last question. You're a deep thinker, and you and I have had some pretty fun conversations, and hopefully these are the first of many. I know you deeply care about the world from both a political, a spiritual. I know you just recently were part of a very important film that's coming out. I want to ask you, it's kind of a two-part question. One, if we're to look 2, 3, 5 years out, are you an optimist or pessimist about the world? And if you were to leave your final message to the audience of what they can do to make the world better, I think it's easy if you watch the Crisis News Network or other things to think that we're just falling apart. I know you see the world differently. So number one, optimist, pessimist, and if you were to say to humanity or to our audience, better ways to think or better ways to serve, I'm going to leave you with those last two questions.
Absolutely. First of all, I'm optimistic through the disorganization that we're currently in. The world is reorganizing itself, and it's coming to a moment where technology is automating its own thinking to a level that there's going to be reorganization and we're going to be thinking differently. And it's easy to, and I subscribe to this sometimes, I fall into the fear of, oh, the systems are going to control us and audit us and this. And I think that that's possible, but I think it's going to be short-lived even if it happens. So I kind of, what I say is I'm building for the other side. I look for what the actual future is, not the immediate future. I kind of look at the horizon line and go, I'm not a person that looks at goals as much as I am at objectives. So what do I need now if this is directionally where I want to be? Because the goal tends to change if I hit the objectives.
Sure.
The goals kind of move. So I look at the world and I go, the world's reorganizing. It is not my job to reorganize it. And it's not my job to stop reorganizing it. How can I contribute to the positive reorganization of the world without me attempting to control it, which again involves surrender, which is I leave my calendar pretty clear. And I say, what do you want me to do today? He says, go for a walk. Go for a walk. And on the walk, my cell phone goes off. And it's JP. He says, what are you doing this weekend? And I go, well, I'm free Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Would you want to come up to Utah and go skiing?
That's exactly what happened, by the way, pretty much.
That is. And I said, absolutely. And I book a ticket and I pull my skis out and I go to Utah and I not only sit down and have fellowship and an intellectual conversation and non-transactional, it's transformative, transcendent. There's 4 other people there. Some of them I know, some of them I don't know. And I have transcendent conversations with them because I was supposed to be there.
Right.
And if my calendar was full the way I used to fill my calendar, there'd have been no way I would have ever been able to do that. So I free myself up. So my recommendation is be responsible to your family, to your business, but be available to what can happen. And you may not subscribe to this. If you're the listener, the watcher, this is part of who I am, is I speak out loud to God. In my belief system, he said, let there be light. He didn't think let there be light. He said it. He auditorily created this universe through vibration and things came into being. And he told us, you're like me. Speak things into being. So I pray out loud. I go on my walk and I talk to him like a crazy person. And then things happen that are even crazier. Mm. And I don't respond to them. I don't react to them. I respond to those things. And I don't think I'm special. I think that's available to every single one of us. And that's actually the relationship that God or the universe or I personify that as God because I truly hear a voice. That's available to everybody. You are a radio. You are not the music. You are not the composer. You are not the singer. And the best joint operation in the world is to say, I'm a puppet. Come on in and speak through me.
Yeah. I had 2 things. One, They say in the Bible or the Torah, they say that the most powerful weapon in the world is the words that come out of your lips. So that kind of confirms that, and I really think that is definitely a part of it. So I really appreciate that. And there was a second point, but I'm not remembering it off the head. That was really, really cool. But we'll end it on that, Ron. I'm just moved.
Be okay.
It's all going to be okay.
It's
right?
all going to be okay.
Yeah.
That's the promise. And here's the other piece of this in John, and this is in the Tanakh and the Torah as well. Is before any of this was the Word, and I am the Word, and the Word was with me.
Mhm.
And God exists outside of time. So we're consumed by our deaths, or we're ignoring our deaths. We live a Monday through Friday to make sure we'll never die. And then someone dies and we go, how did they die? And they went in a motorcycle accident. Like, well, I don't have a motorcycle, so I exclude myself from their death.
Yeah.
Or we live, and we live fully. And if God exists outside of time and all of this was written, then we're just in a movie, and the movie's probably already done. And we're sitting in the theater with him and going, oh, this was the day that you and I got together, and God gives us a nudge and he goes, you're on one side and I'm on the other. This is when you guys did the podcast. I love this part.
Mhm.
And we're actually in a movie of our lives. And when we die, we all die at the same time, because that happens outside of time. So you hear these stories about people like, oh, they crossed over and they saw their grandmother and their grandparents and their parents on the other. Yeah. And if you turned around, you'd see your kids and your grandkids, because you're outside of time.
Right.
And we all get there at the same moment to the lobby, and it's going to be fine.
Yeah. I know what the last thing I was going to say on that note too. I was with a brain surgeon last night for dinner. It was one of my 10 people. It was really fun. And his specialty, of course, is MRIs and checking out your brain. And I didn't know this. I just did a full body AI MRI with Noah, which was super cool, by the way.
Yeah.
So I was complaining. I said, I don't get it. Like, these magnets are there and you're putting your body in, and then those are horrible sounds. Like, why do we need the sounds? Can they ever quiet that damn machine? And like, anyone who's had an MRI knows it's a damn loud machine. He goes, JP, don't you get it? He goes, it's not the magnets, it's the sound. So what I know about MRIs is the magnets kind of get your protons in your body neutral. No, it's actually the sound that spins them. The magnets get you floating, get them ready. Each tone of the frequency of the vibration is what gets them to spin. And then somehow, God, how you take a picture of your protons spinning, and then you can see your organs in your body. Now, tell me that this is not somehow between Star Trek, Star Wars, godliness, that we are making sounds. And by the way, your sound here, which is why if you're having an MRI machine versus the sound here, it's a different sound because your protons vibrate differently here or here on different frequencies based on which part of the body will make your frequency spin. What the heck are we even talking about here, Ron? Like, how does that even happen? Like, when you were talking about like this God and this frequency going through you, our MRI machines are doing the same thing right now. And we don't even think about it. It's like, it's in reality. It's like, if you can't fathom, I know we went woo today, guys. We got woo in the end here, but MRI machines are doing this every single day. The same thing you were talking about. I just found that fascinating.
But I know that this operates on frequency. Like, there are people now that are working in frequency medicine that are tuning, like, there's a frequency for your liver. If you get it to vibrate at the correct frequency, disease leaves it.
Right.
It evacuates.
So now in medicine 2.0 or 2.5, they now can image that with frequency, and pretty soon you'll be able to heal with frequency.
And this is the point.
Some people are doing it now. I've met a lot of energy workers here in Austin, Texas, but yeah, for sure.
There's people that are doing it with the machines. This is happening. This is a real technology. And the amazing thing to me is that there's not a drug in the world that cures anything. All drugs treat symptoms. There's no cure for anything. The body cures things. And that's fundamentally what is at the core of this. And like Edward Case and Nostradamus, there's people that have gone and said, oh, I project the future. And in their prediction is medicine will be 100% frequency. That all of our healing will be frequency. And that's very Star Trek. And it's
fascinating.
If you could pick in the course of human history when to be alive, why would you not pick now?
I would totally agree with you. Well, we better wrap this up. You and I could go another hour, and maybe we'll bring you back and we'll do a part 2, assuming that our audience liked part 1. If not, you and I will just go skiing. We'll talk each other's ear off on the chairlift with our friend Alan, your twin brother, and we'll just keep ourselves entertained. But hopefully we entertained you today. Hopefully you got some practical tips on how to basically brand yourself, how to launch your marketing, and hopefully there were some good things for your product and your soul. Thank you once again for listening to our show. If you loved our show, you can subscribe to our newsletter. Alex, remind me, where do we go? jp-newman.com. I'm getting good at this. And the newsletters are getting better and better. And would love to have you to subscribe. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening. We appreciate it. Our loving, growing audience. Ron, thank you for taking the time and sharing your wisdom.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Thank you, King Wizard Magi.